I never wanted to be the face of neighborhood resistance. I'm a software engineer who works from home and minds his own business. All I wanted was to enjoy my modest 3-bedroom house in Oak Ridge Estates with my dog Cooper and my weekend gardening hobby. But Karen Williams, the president of our HOA, had other plans for me. The moment I planted those hydrangeas without submitting the proper landscaping approval forms, the war began. Those flowers are not on the approved plant list for front yards, she informed me one Saturday morning, appearing at my fence like she'd materialized from the ether. Her perfectly highlighted bob haircut didn't move an inch as she tilted her head condescendingly. I'll need you to remove them by Monday or the board will issue a formal violation notice. I wiped the dirt from my hands and stood up slowly. Good morning to you too, Karen. Actually, hydrangeas are on the approved list, page 8 of the landscaping guidelines. Right below Elias. I'd memorized the entire HOA handbook within a week of moving in. Knowledge, as they say, is power. Her smile tightened. Well, the list was recently updated. You'll receive the new guidelines in next month's newsletter. But I can assure you, those particular blue hydrangeas are definitely not compliant. This was my first taste of Karen's special talent, making up rules on the spot. I later learned this was her signature move as HOA president, retroactively creating regulations to target specific homeowners who had somehow gotten on her bad side. Unfortunately for Karen, she'd chosen the wrong homeowner to harass. Over the next few months, I became intimately acquainted with Karen's reign of terror. She cited me for trash cans being visible from the street, they weren't, for a non-existent oil stain on my driveway, and for Christmas lights that stayed up 3 days past the January 6th removal deadline, they were removed on January 5th. Each citation came with a warning, then a fine, increasing with every alleged violation. The pattern was clear, Karen was targeting me. But why? I finally got my answer from my neighbor Rick, who'd lived in Oak Ridge Estates for 15 years. Your house is on the corner lot she wanted to buy for her daughter, he explained while we grilled burgers in his backyard. She had already told everyone it was a done deal, but then you swooped in with a better offer. She took it personally, man. Mystery solved. But knowing why Karen was after me didn't make her campaign of harassment any less annoying. The final straw came when I received a certified letter claiming I owed the HOA over $2,000 in unpaid fines and late fees. According to the letter, I'd been sent multiple notices over the past year, none of which I'd ever received. The letter was signed by all 5 board members and included a warning: a lien would be placed on my property if I didn't pay within 30 days. This was no longer just harassment. This was fraud. I requested an emergency meeting with the full HOA board, which Karen had to grant according to the bylaws. To my surprise, most board members seemed confused by my outrage. They showed me copies of violation notices complete with photos of my supposed infractions and documentation of certified mailings, none of which I'd ever received. I have a security camera at my front door, I explained calmly. It records all deliveries and visitors. I never received these notices. And some of these photos have been altered. I pulled out my laptop and showed them side-by-side comparisons of the actual state of my property versus the doctored photos in their files. The trash cans that were supposedly visible from the street had been digitally moved from behind my fence. The unapproved structure in my backyard was actually my neighbor's shed, cropped to look like it was on my property. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. All except Karen, who maintained her icy composure. These accusations are ridiculous, she said with a dismissive wave. Why would I doctor photos or forge documents? I'm a volunteer just trying to maintain our property values. But I wasn't finished. I've also brought copies of my bank records showing I paid my HOA dues on time every month via automatic payment, I said, sliding the bank statements across the table. Yet somehow, according to your records, I've been chronically late, incurring late fees that magically compound month after month. One of the board members, a retired accountant named David, frowned as he examined the statements. These payment dates don't match our records at all, he muttered, looking increasingly concerned. Karen's face flushed red. Our accounting software must have a glitch, she said quickly. We can look into that and make adjustments if necessary. There's one more thing, I added, pulling out the final piece of evidence I'd been saving. I filed a formal records request last week for all communication regarding my property. I received these. I distributed printed emails between Karen and the property management company. In them, Karen explicitly instructed the manager to lose my payments and backdate violation notices. The most damning email contained her admission. I want him gone before summer. Keep finding violations until he gives up and sells. The room fell silent. Karen's face went from flushed to pale in seconds. Those emails are fake, she sputtered, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. He obviously fabricated them to avoid paying his legitimate fines. David, the accountant, cleared his throat. Karen, these emails came from our official records request. They have proper headers and metadata. They appear to be authentic. Karen grabbed the papers and ripped them in half. This meeting is over, she declared, standing up abruptly. The fines stand and will proceed with the lien as planned. But the other board members didn't back her up this time. Instead, David suggested they adjourn to discuss the matter privately. Karen stormed out, slamming the door behind her. 3 days later, I received an apologetic call from David. The board had conducted an emergency session and discovered extensive evidence of Karen's document falsification. They had voted to rescind all my fines and remove Karen from the board, effective immediately. But that wasn't the end of Karen's troubles. Because she had used the U.S. Postal Service to deliver fraudulent notices and demands for payment, and because she had falsified official HOA documents filed with the county, her actions constituted mail fraud and forgery. The board felt legally obligated to report her to the authorities. I wasn't home when the police came for Karen, but according to neighborhood legend, and my security camera, she was escorted from her house in handcuffs on a Tuesday afternoon, screaming about property values and ungrateful neighbors. The charges were serious. Multiple felony counts that could result in significant fines and even jail time. When I checked my mailbox that evening, I found a formal notice from the HOA board apologizing for the irregularities in their enforcement actions and confirming that all fines against my property had been voided. Attached was a copy of Karen's termination letter as board president. As I read the letter on my front porch, I spotted Karen's husband quietly loading boxes into their SUV across the street. He avoided eye contact with neighbors, moving quickly and efficiently, like a man who wanted to disappear. A for sale sign had appeared in their yard that morning. I later learned from Rick that Karen had been released on bail but was facing over a dozen charges. Her real estate license had been suspended pending investigation, effectively ending her career. The look on her face when she returned home to find the for sale sign, captured perfectly on my security camera, was a mixture of rage, humiliation, and the dawning realization that her reign of terror had finally come to an end. All because she couldn't resist the temptation to falsify one more document against the wrong homeowner.